For decades, nuclear power seemed headed for the dustbin of history. After Chernobyl and Fukushima, many countries turned to renewables and natural gas, while reactors became more closely associated with risk than with the future. But the laws of physics never changed. Nuclear energy remains the most powerful and cleanest source of electricity available. So when global demand for energy surged, driven by artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and the digital economy, long-standing fears of nuclear power, much of them rooted in myth, quickly faded into the background. Today we are witnessing a nuclear revival. China is building dozens of new plants. The United States and Europe are emerging from their long hibernation. And India is entering the race as well. But the real game changer may be small modular reactors, or SMRs, a technology promising cheaper, faster construction with plants assembled like building blocks. This is no longer science fiction. Google, Amazon and Rolls-Royce are investing in SMRs, and China has already brought the first commercial reactor of this kind online. The race for the future of energy has just begun. Quote, "Today we are announcing a historic first for the US energy grid. In a landmark agreement, Google has teamed up with Kairos Power and Tennessee Valley Authority to help deploy the Hermes 2 plant, a new advanced nuclear reactor," declared Kate Brandt, Google's Chief Sustainability Officer, on August 19, 2025. The company's goal is to secure a reliable, zero-emission energy source for its data centers. Preparations began a year ago in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, for the construction of a 50-megawatt modular reactor prototype. If the tests succeed, Hermes 2 is set to come online by 2030, powering Google's server farms in Tennessee and Alabama. The next target, as Amanda Peterson-Corio emphasized, will be to deliver up to 500 megawatts of nuclear power to the US grid. For Kairos Power, a startup founded in 2016 in Alameda, California, this is a chance to position itself as a leader in SMRs. The company was established by three scientists: Professor Per Peterson of Berkeley, Dr. Edward Blandford of New Mexico, and Dr. Michael Lampher. Their key innovation is cooling the reactor with molten fluoride salt instead of water. This coolant can withstand temperatures of up to 700 degrees Celsius, operates at lower pressure, and stores far more energy. The result is a reactor that is more efficient, safer, and smaller than conventional designs. In short, the TRIOS project combines higher safety, flexibility, and efficiency with a footprint far smaller than that of traditional nuclear plants. For its first years, Kairos Power operated mostly at the conceptual stage, but lacked the capital to scale. Investors preferred to pour money into renewables, until the energy crisis of late 2021, when restrictions on Russian oil and gas exports exposed the vulnerability of systems built on a mix of renewables and hydrocarbon-fired plants. The mood shifted quickly. In 2022, Kairos secured grants from Bloomberg NEF and New Mexico's State Fund. 2 years later, in 2024, the US Department of Energy awarded the company $303 million to build a test reactor. The seriousness of Washington's commitment was reflected in the speed of the regulatory process. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission issued a construction permit in just 18 months. Hermes 2 thus became the first modular nuclear reactor in the Western world to actually begin construction, with its prototype scheduled to come online in Oak Ridge in 2027. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, June 2025 brought a breakthrough of its own. Rolls-Royce SMR was selected as the lead supplier of the country's first modular reactors, beating out rivals such as GE Hitachi, Holtec and Westinghouse. The newly created state company, Great British Energy Nuclear, aims to boost Britain's nuclear capacity from the current 6.5 gigawatts to more than 24 gigawatts by 2050. The government, alongside private partners, is set to invest £38 billion in building the large-scale Sizewell C plant and completing the long-delayed Hinkley Point C project. But only by combining such mega-projects with a network of smaller, modular reactors will the UK be able to hit the 24 gigawatt target by mid-century. Rolls-Royce SMRs are not as innovative as Kairos Power's designs. Their advantage lies in using well-tested pressurized water reactor technology, only in a miniaturized form. The Rolls-Royce SMR, rated at 470 megawatts, is designed from 1,500 standardized modules that can be mass-produced and shipped for on-site assembly. Construction is expected to take around 500 days, with a total cost of just under £3 billion. That means a reactor in the UK could be completed even faster than Hermes 2, though the project is still awaiting final regulatory approval. For now, Western SMRs remain largely at the project stage, sometimes highly advanced, but untested in practice. The Kairos Power prototype is already under construction, but only trial runs will show if it delivers on its promise. Rolls-Royce is still mired in regulatory hurdles, while GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy has already shipped components of its BWRX-300 design to Canada. Ottawa has granted all necessary approvals, and the 300 megawatt reactor is slated to begin operation in 2030, with 3 more to follow. In Europe, the first such reactor is set to appear in Poland. At the end of August, Orlen and Synthos Green Energy announced plans to build the same BWRX-300 unit near Włocławek. By 2035, Orlen aims to have at least 2 SMRs in operation with a combined capacity of 600 megawatts. Thus, the SMR race is only just beginning, and for now it may seem modest, but all signs suggest that within a decade, it will evolve into a global competition, driven by an insatiable demand for energy. According to an August 2025 report by the US Energy Information Administration, electricity consumption in the United States is growing at roughly 3% a year, reaching nearly 4,200 billion kilowatt-hours in 2025. The main driver? Data centers, from cryptocurrency mining to artificial intelligence, which are forcing a steady increase in production and a search for cheaper power sources. China's appetite for energy is even greater. In 2024, consumption rose by nearly 7% to 9,900 billion kilowatt-hours, already double that of the United States. Beyond industry and AI, the boom is fueled by the rapid spread of electric vehicles. More than 31 million are now on Chinese roads. India is also racing ahead, with electricity demand growing by 3 to 4% annually, reaching 1,700 billion kilowatt-hours today. By contrast, the European Union looks anemic. For more than a decade, EU electricity consumption has stagnated at around 2,700 billion kilowatt-hours per year. Germany is the chief culprit. Its consumption fell from 595 billion kilowatt-hours in 2015 to 462 billion in 2024, a drop of more than 22% in just 10 years. Your Electric portal attributes this partly to gains in energy efficiency, but more importantly to the crisis in German industry. As a result, the EU as a whole is not experiencing the kind of dynamic growth seen in China, the United States, or India. If it wants to keep pace in AI and data center development, Europe will have to change course. In 2024, global energy consumption rose by 4.3%, nearly twice the pace of the previous year. According to the IEA, demand will continue to grow by an average of 3.9% annually in the coming years. This is the beginning of a new era of electricity, the agency declared, noting that data centers are the primary driver. Today they consume 415 billion kilowatt-hours annually, about 1.5% of global demand. But by 2030, that figure is expected to more than double, to 945 billion kilowatt-hours. In the United States, data centers may soon consume more power than the country's aluminum, steel, cement, and chemical industries combined. By 2030, they are projected to account for more than 20% of demand growth in advanced economies. In short, the world's appetite for energy is only beginning to grow, and data centers require stable, carbon-free sources of power. Renewables alone are too intermittent, which is why more and more countries are rediscovering nuclear energy. High electricity prices, the push toward net zero, the shortcomings of renewables, and shrinking access to cheap fossil fuels have all made nuclear, until recently politically untouchable, attractive once again, after 2 decades of decline. The first nuclear investment boom began in the 1960s, driven by fascination with the immense promise of nuclear reactors. Coal-fired plants were choking the air with particulates, and the need to sustain vast mining industries inflicted heavy environmental damage. By contrast, a nuclear power plant generates the same amount of power with just a few dozen tons of enriched uranium each year, rather than millions of tons of coal. The prospect was compelling. Within a single decade, by 1970, 62 nuclear power stations had been built across 15 countries. The oil crisis of 1973 provided the next boost, after Arab states imposed an embargo on Israel's allies. France responded most aggressively. Under the Mesmer plan, it built 19 plants with 58 reactors in just a decade, covering 80% of its electricity needs. West Germany commissioned 22 reactors, meeting about 30% of national demand. In the United States, 99 reactors were built across 60 nuclear plants, with peak investment in 1975. Spurred by the oil crisis, Washington drafted a plan similar to France's, a rapid expansion of nuclear power on a massive scale. But by late 1970s, the plan was abandoned. As the NRC later noted, the wave of reactor orders in the United States collapsed almost overnight. Higher energy prices after the oil embargo slowed demand, while utilities had already ordered more capacity than they needed. At the same time, construction costs and interest rates soared, and after the 1979 accident at 3 Mile Island, new safety requirements added to the bill. Contracts signed between 1974 and 1978 for 126 reactors were cancelled, and until 2008, not a single new order was placed. And so, after 2 decades of rapid growth, nuclear power entered a long drought. Its freeze began already in the 1980s, not only for economic reasons, but also because of technological, political, and social concerns. First-generation reactors produced up to 20 tons of nuclear waste per year, and the absence of credible storage solutions fueled public anxiety. Radioactivity was increasingly associated with nuclear weapons, while media and pop culture amplified visions of disaster. Fears ran especially high in Germany. When construction began in 1975 on a new nuclear power plant near Ludwigshafen, Der Spiegel warned that a single accident could claim hundreds of thousands of lives. Eventually, the predictions of inevitable catastrophe began to feel real. In March 1979, the film The China Syndrome, a fictional account of a nuclear meltdown, premiered in the US theaters. Barely 2 weeks later, a real incident unfolded at the 3 Mile Island plant. A pump failure cut off the cooling system, and an operator mistakenly disabled the emergency backup. Ultimately, safety rods halted the reaction, but a small cloud of radioactive steam still escaped from the reactor. Although radiation levels posed no threat, panic swept through Harrisburg. Pregnant women and children were evacuated, and thousands fled the city. The crisis only began to ease when President Jimmy Carter, a trained nuclear engineer, made a highly publicized visit to the plant to demonstrate that the site was safe. Yet one of the 32 nuclear reactors built in the Soviet Union for civilian energy production proved far less resilient for human error and negligence. It is worth recalling that more than twice that number were used for uranium enrichment to feed the USSR's military program. On April 26, 1986, in Chernobyl, engineers conducted an experiment that involved shutting down all safety and cooling systems. To their surprise, the reactor overheated, triggering a hydrogen explosion that tore apart the power unit and hurled 50 tons of radioactive fuel into the atmosphere. But despite the scale of the disaster, the death toll was lower than the panic suggested. 31 people died immediately, and the World Health Organization later estimated that radiation exposure contributed to around 4,000 cancer-related deaths over the next 2 decades. A similar wave of fear followed the Fukushima incident in 2011. An earthquake automatically shut down the reactors, but a 15-meter tsunami easily overtopped the 6-meter seawall, flooding the facility. A hydrogen explosion released radioactive fuel, shocking the world. Yet the media focus was on the leak rather than on the 26,000 deaths caused directly by the tsunami. In reality, no subsequent deaths were attributed to the radiation exposure. But in the West, the psychological impact of Fukushima deepened nuclear power's decline. Even the introduction of safer, third-generation reactors with upgraded safety systems could not reverse the trend. Quote, "There is nothing in the laws of nature that prevents us from building better nuclear plants. What holds us back is a profound, unjustified and widespread lack of trust. Society doesn't believe experts, because those experts once claimed they are infallible," explained physicist Freeman Dyson, one of the pioneers of early nuclear reactor design, in his book Imagined Worlds. During this period, it wasn't only Germany that turned its back on nuclear energy. Even in France, where reactors supplied more than 70% of the country's electricity, green movements forced a halt to new construction and pushed for a gradual phase-out of existing plants, to be replaced with renewables and gas-fired power. But the crisis triggered by reduced fossil fuel deliveries from Russia exposed just how vulnerable systems built on intermittent renewables could be. Nuclear energy once again began to look like a necessity. The same logic held in the United States and China, where the rise of artificial intelligence and electric mobility drove soaring energy demand that renewables alone could not meet. The return of nuclear projects, this time in a new form, became a reality across the West as well. According to the World Nuclear Status Report of January 2025, there are currently 411 reactors operating worldwide with a combined capacity of 371 gigawatts. Their average age, 32 years, underscores just how long the nuclear sector has endured an investment freeze. But momentum is shifting. In 2024 alone, 7 new reactors came online, adding over 8 gigawatts of capacity. 3 in China and 1 each in France, India, the UAE, and the United States. Construction is now underway in 13 countries, encompassing 61 reactors. Over the past 5 years, 40 new projects have been launched, 26 of them in China, accounting for 62% of the total. The numbers speak for themselves. After decades of decline, nuclear power is experiencing a revival, and China has emerged as its undisputed leader. Today, the country operates 58 reactors with a combined capacity of over 60 gigawatts, double the fleet it had just a decade ago. Beijing's ambitions, however, go much further. On April 27, 2025, Prime Minister Li Qiang approved the construction of 10 additional reactors. Within a decade, China is expected to operate more than 100 reactors, with 113 gigawatts of capacity. and by 2040 it aims to surpass 200 gigawatts. Such growth would allow Beijing to gradually phase out coal-fired power plants, while maintaining grid stability alongside a rising share of renewables. These ambitions have not gone unnoticed in Washington. Writing in the Financial Times, Professor Lamy Kim of the US Army War College warned that by building and financing nuclear plants not only at home but also across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, Beijing is shaping the global rules of the game to America's disadvantage. The United States still boasts the world's largest nuclear fleet, 94 reactors with a combined 96 gigawatts of capacity. But its lead is eroding. Only 2 new units are under construction, at the Vogtle plant in Georgia. Beyond that, there are no major projects in the pipeline, only stopgap measures to keep existing plants afloat. On September 20, 2024, Constellation Energy Corp announced a $1.6 billion deal with Microsoft to restart the Three Mile Island nuclear plant, the same facility infamous for its 1979 accident. For the next 20 years, the plant's entire output will supply Microsoft AI data centers. Similar moves soon followed elsewhere. Holtec International is bringing Michigan's Palisades plant back online, partly to serve as a base for producing its own SMRs. NextEra Energy plans to restart an aging reactor in Iowa to provide cheap power for data centers, but the list of easy facilities to revive is short. That is why Google signed a deal with Kairos Power and Amazon with Energy Northwest, initially for 4 SMRs of 320 megawatts each, with the option to expand to 12. Amazon is also investing its own capital to accelerate the technology's development. Only after America's tech giants stirred did Washington move, and quickly realized how much ground the West had lost. Supply chains, component manufacturing, skilled labor, and innovation capacity had all atrophied. After decades of stagnation, the industry survived mainly on servicing old reactors. The ability to build new ones had nearly vanished. In the 1970s, France's Mesmer plan could be implemented within a decade. Today, such an effort would be inconceivable in the United States. In China, by contrast, the past decade has been spent systematically building the industrial base for nuclear expansion, and the results are now plain to see. And so on May 23, 2025, President Trump signed 4 executive orders. First, reinvigorating the nuclear industrial base. Second, reforming nuclear reactor testing at the Department of Energy. Third, ordering the reform of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And fourth, deploying advanced nuclear reactor technologies for national security. The goal is clear: to rapidly restore America's nuclear capabilities. The challenge posed by China has been accepted. The race is on. Already in 2022, Emmanuel Macron moved in a similar direction. He announced plans to build 6 new reactors, with the option of adding 8 more, and pushed through the inclusion of nuclear power in the EU's green taxonomy. That decision gave nuclear the same support status as renewables over Germany's objections. But it soon became clear that France's nuclear industry no longer had the capacity to deliver projects on that scale. On June 10, 2025, the French government, the industry, that is EDF, Orano, CEA, Framatome and Andra, and labor unions, signed a tripartite agreement in Paris. The state committed to provide financial backing, help rebuild industrial capabilities, restart innovation, and supply new talent up to 10,000 workers a year in the coming years. Following the deal, French nuclear companies began signaling that they would step back from foreign tenders to focus on building new reactors at home, exactly in line with Macron's priorities. This is the current frontline of the nuclear race. China remains the clear leader, with the United States and France scrambling to catch up after a lost decade. India has also entered the race. It now operates 25 reactors, with a combined capacity of nearly 9 gigawatts, and in April 2025 announced a plan to expand that tenfold by 2047. 18 new units are already under construction or in preparation. The UK's ambitions outlined earlier add another player to the mix. Others are trying to keep pace as well. Turkey and Egypt each have 4 reactors under construction, while Russia has 3. But Moscow is clearly falling behind. Rosatom has focused increasingly on foreign projects and in June 2025 had to request additional subsidies from the Kremlin. The war in Ukraine ensures that Russia will be unable to expand its own nuclear capacity at home for years to come. More and more states, whether to strengthen their international standing or to secure their energy future, are turning to nuclear power. According to the IEA, global investment in nuclear energy now stands at around $70 billion a year, could reach $120 billion by 2030, and as much as $2 trillion by 2050. Growing energy demand, rising geopolitical tensions, and intensifying competition are only accelerating the race. And increasingly, all signs point to a potential dark horse of the industry: innovative, small, modular reactors. According to the IAEA, more than 20 SMR projects are currently under development in the United States, supported by over 15 specialized startups. An IEA report, The Path to a New Era for Nuclear Energy, argues that cost-competitive SMR modules, backed by subsidies and new business models, could pave the way for a nuclear revival. The key driver is the private sector's growing demand for stable, carbon-free energy. The IEA projects that the global SMR market, still in its infancy, could be worth $678 billion by 2050. The United States, eager to claw back ground lost to China in conventional nuclear plants, appears best positioned to lead. Small modular reactors promise much shorter build times, 2 to 3 times less than large plants, alongside lower costs. Crucially, the concept is rooted in mass production, standardized, repeatable modules built on the same principles that have driven down costs since the Industrial Revolution. Rolls-Royce SMR, for instance, plans to assemble its reactors from 1,500 standardized components. A similar approach is being pursued by Holtec International, a long-standing player in the nuclear sector, until now focused mainly on decommissioning plants and building spent fuel storage facilities. With annual revenues of around $500 million, Holtec is betting big on SMRs. In August 2025, the company announced plans to build 4 modular reactors at the Palisades plant in Michigan, working with South Korea's Hyundai Engineering and Construction. CEO Kelly Trice told the Financial Times that production of the first units at its Camden, New Jersey facility would begin later this year. The price tag for each reactor is estimated at around $3 billion. In 2026, Holtec's CEO announced plans to take the company public to raise capital for further growth and expansion. The next step will be building an SMR factory in South Yorkshire, which will supply customers across Europe and the Middle East. In May 2025, Regional Mayor Oliver Coppard signed an agreement with Holtec to jointly train the workforce for this investment. The past year has seen an extraordinary acceleration in small modular reactors projects. China has also joined the race. In early June 2025, Global Times reported that the world's first commercial SMR is under construction on Hainan Island. The Linglong 1 reactor, a 125 megawatt unit built by CNNC, gives Beijing what experts estimate to be a 3 to 4 year lead over the United States. According to an OECD report from January this year, 127 SMR projects have already been launched worldwide, an increase of 81% in just 1 year. All signs suggest that the decisive phase of this competition will come after 2030, when it becomes clear who will lead the new nuclear era. Over the next few years, real-world deployment will test whether SMRs can deliver on their promise. Today, building 2,000 MW of nuclear capacity in the United States, the UK or France costs between $20 and $40 billion. By the way, China claims to build at a third of that price. If the same capacity can be achieved with SMRs at half the cost or less with mass production, and quicker, then we won't just be talking about a nuclear renaissance. We will be witnessing a genuine revolution, one that could make reliable, high-output nuclear power widely accessible. And revolutions of that scale tend to change the world beyond recognition.